The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the CFRE application process step-by-step webinar. My name is Ashley Gatewood, and I am the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. Today, I am joined on the back end by my colleagues Christine, Paul, and Sarah, and they will be answering your questions in the question pane. So if you have a question, feel free to type it into the question pane and they will come back to you. We also have a few question breaks built into today's presentation. Everybody is on mute and I will get us started with a few FAQs. So firstly, the application cost is $875 US at the regular rate and $700 US if you are the member of a participating organization. A participating organization would be the Association of Fundraising Professionals, the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy, Canadian Association of Gift Planners. We have a list of 30 participating organizations we work with in the About section of our website. So feel free to have a look there because if you are a member of any of them, you will be able to get that discount. Today we are recording the webinar and I will email you a link to the recording as well as the slides within 24 hours. If you don't see it in your inbox, please check your spam folder. Sometimes they take a side trip over there. And your participation today will count for 1 point of non-fundraising education in your CFRE education requirement. All right, so I'm going to start today with going through an overview of the CFRE certification process. The first step is to start your application on our website, and then you'll input your information. Today, I'm going to go through all of the different pieces of information that you will be putting into this application. You will select your test window, and I'll talk more about test windows in a few slides. But you do need to commit to the window in which you want to take the exam before you submit your application. Then we recommend you double check your application because some people take a few days to fill it out and some people will take a few years to fill it out. So if a lot of time has elapsed between the time you started it and the time you submit it, you're going to want to just cast your eye over it again because we do find that people have some errors that might crop up over time if a, say, conference organizer changes their name or something like that. Now, step 5 is that you're going to submit your application and pay. And this is super important because this means that it's completely free to start your application. Even if you're completely on the fence about CFRE, you're just thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe I won't do this. It's fine. You can start your application, have a look around, start entering your information. There's no obligation. You will only pay when you feel ready to submit and move forward. Once you submit your application, our staff will review it. And then once they approve it, they're going to send you an email about scheduling your exam. Once you schedule your exam, you will take it. And when you pass, you become a CFRE, right? In that moment, when you pass, you're a CFRE. And as a CFRE, you will recertify every 3 years. Sometimes people say, I think recertification doesn't make any sense. If I pass the exam and I meet your application requirements, why do I need to do this? Well, CFREs in the US earn 7 to 15% more than non-CFREs with comparable experience. In Canada, CFREs earn 25,000 Canadian dollars on average more than their counterparts without the CFRE. And one of the reasons why CFREs can command so much of a higher salary is because you're recertifying and showing that your fundraising body of knowledge is always current, right? So imagine if you became a CFRE in 2015, your fundraising body of knowledge could be 6 years out of date, right? So this is why it is so important that we have recertification. So I'm going to start right now with, we have 2 polls today, and we're going to just do one poll here about where you are in the application process. So I am launching this poll. Go on ahead, tell us where you are. If you've started it, you haven't started it, you've completed it, but you're just waiting to hit submit. All right, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, so it looks like We've got 41% haven't yet started, 53 are somewhere in process, and 6% have completed it but are waiting to submit. Perfect. All right. Well, no matter where you are, you're going to get some good advice today. To begin, like I said, you can start your application over at our website. And one really key piece of this is when you enter your primary email address, make sure it's one you can always access. A lot of people make the mistake of putting their work email address in there. And then if you're suddenly not at your job and we're trying to reach you with information about a deadline extension, or maybe you've submitted your application and we have a question, and we don't want to be emailing an email address where you can't actually access the emails, right? So just make sure that it's a primary email address is one that you can always access. To start your application, you can see on your screen here our homepage, and we have 2 spots that you can go. So you can either do it from this login or this little computer screen icon on the left side of your screen there. The application segments are very straightforward. First is your contact info, easy stuff you know off the top of your head. Then professional practice, this is your time working in fundraising. Next is going to be education, so all of the professional development you've done that is going to count towards your CFRE application requirements. Next is your professional performance, so this is you raising money, the funds that you have brought in. Then there's a section where you're going to select your test window, you're going to agree to abide by the donor bill of rights, and then you're going to include your payment information. All right, we have our second and final poll. So let me get this cooking for us. And we're gonna just ask, how long have you been professionally fundraising? 0 to 3 years, 4 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, or more than 15 years. All right, and I'm gonna close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, well, we've got people from a wide swath with us today. It's excellent. So it looks like 3/4 of folks have been in fundraising for more than 3 years. Excellent. All right, and the reason why we ask that is because for our professional practice requirement here, you need to have worked for 36 months in the last 5 years in fundraising. Now, if you haven't, that's completely fine. And you actually, in a way, could be setting yourself up pretty well. So I'll talk about what that means in a minute. The application works on a point system. For professional practice, you need 36 points, and it's super easy. 1 point equals 1 month that you've been employed in a paid professional fundraising role. So if you work 36 months in the last 5 years, you have your 36 points. If you are a consultant, it's very important to note that we can only count the months that you were actually consulting. That means if I started my consultancy in January of this year, but I didn't land my first client until March, I'm going to count my time as a consultant from March, right? Not just from when I decided, okay, I'm a consultant now and I'm out here getting my business cards and my logo and all that stuff, right? We are going to count from when you actually had your first client. Like I said, we're going back the last 5 years. And if you work full-time, we need to know that at least 50% of your duties are fundraising related. If you do marketing half the time, you fundraise half the time, maybe you do PR half the time, fundraise half the time, right? That's fine, just as long as at least 50% of your duties are related to fundraising. Now, if you work 20 hours a week, we do need to have all 20 hours of that time related to paid professional fundraising. All right, so have a look at your screen now. And this is a screenshot of what the application looks like. So I'm going to go through and explain what this is, what's going on in this page here. So this is very straightforward. You're going to tell us your employer, your role, and then there's a drop down. Well, there's a drop down for your role right there. And that's where you'll tell us if you're a paid professional, member of the development staff, or if you're a consultant. And you'll do your start date and your end date. Now you'll notice here that the start date is January of 2016. If you have any information in your CFRE application that you want to count that is from 2016, you will need to submit your application before the end of this year because we're only going back 5 years. On January 1, 2022, everything you have from 2016 is going to expire out of your application. And I'll show you an example in a few slides of what that looks like when that happens. Then you're just going to check a box that says that this is true information, and that is how you add a fundraising job. If you are a consultant, it looks a little bit different. You're just going to select consultant from your role, and then if you look at your screen down here, we have a place where you're going to add your client list. Now, note that you earn 1 point per month that you've been consulting. So that means if in January you had 16 clients, that's 1 point. And if you had 0 clients in February, that's 0 points, right? So it doesn't matter how many clients you have in a month, the most points we can award you for a month of consulting time is 1 point. All right, now, once you have added in this information, you're going to have a dashboard page that looks just like this with your details in there. And you're going to see, if you look at your screen here, you're going to see this red circle come up over your total points. Our application does the math for you. So you're not going to have to sit there with a calculator. You're going to enter your months, and then the application itself is going to calculate that this person has 40 total points. That number 40 is in green because they have met the points requirement of at least 36 points right beside it. All right, so now we're going to jump into our first question break where my colleague Paul is going to let us know if we've had any questions come in about professional practice.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you. Does volunteer fundraising for nonprofits count towards the 36 months?
It does not. It must be a paid professional fundraising role.
Great. Another question. I've retired back in 2016. Does this mean, but I'm now getting back into fundraising. Does this mean I would not be eligible?
So once you meet that 36 points requirement, you would be eligible. But if anything you've done prior to 2016, as far as your professional practice, will be beyond that 5-year period and will not count towards the 36-point requirement.
Great. Can you count full-time employment and consulting in the same period?
Actually, it's a great question, Paul. Since you review a lot of applications, how do you like to see that?
So unfortunately, you can never earn more than 1 point per month, regardless if you're doing consulting and nonprofit work at the same time, or even if you have multiple clients within the same month. The maximum is 1 point per month. So you can certainly list multiple employments within the application, even if they occur at the same time, but you won't receive multiple points for 1 month. It's just 1 point maximum per month.
Great. Any other questions?
Should we enter in information that is older than 5 years or just focus on the 5-year period?
Just focus on the 5-year period.
Great. That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So now we're going to move into the education segment of the application. This is the area that usually takes people the longest to fill out. You need 80 points of education. Now, the main way people earn these points is through attending fundraising education. Super easy. 1 point equals 1 hour that you are in a session, that you're in fundraising instruction, right? So 1 contact hour equals 1 point. And that's you as an attendee in a session. Now, let's say you're a presenter. If you present, you will earn 2 points per hour for previously developed materials. And the first time you make a new presentation, we will award you 3 points per hour to take into account the time and learning that you've had to create this new presentation. We can take up to 36 points for presenting. And if you don't present, that's totally fine. It's not a requirement, but it's just something that some people do. And it is a way to earn those points a little bit faster. I do need to point out that you need to ensure that your sessions are at least 45 minutes long in order to qualify. If you go to a conference and they have a bunch of 25-minute sessions or 15-minute little quick things, those are going to be too brief to count for this. We need to see that it's a meaty fundraising education, because that's partially what's going to help you prepare for the exam, but that's also going to demonstrate that you have a robust fundraising body of knowledge. And again, we're going back the last 5 years for everything related to fundraising sessions. Now, we also are able to take up to 10 points of non-fundraising related education. This would be if you go on a technology course or a leadership course or a management course, right? It's not necessarily directly fundraising, but it's going to have an influence on you being a better fundraiser, right? The key word here is that it must be relevant, because we've had people submit for all kinds of interesting things like chocolate making classes, yoga classes. These cannot count, right? Because your ability to make a cherry cordial does not necessarily ladder up to you being able to do, donor prospecting, okay? So it does need to be relevant. When you are looking at inputting your education, it's really key that you subtract out anything that is not actual session time. So have a look at your screen here. This is the number one mistake people make on their application. They attend a master class, it goes from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and they think, wow, this is great. I got 6 points because I was there for 6 hours. However, we can only count the time that you are in instruction. So you need to subtract out if there's morning coffee, lunch, drinks with the exhibitors at a conference, if there's an awards ceremony. We can't count those things because they're not actual fundraising instruction. So make sure that when you are inputting your time that you have spent at a conference or wherever, that it is purely the instruction time that you are supplying. If you miss a session because you've got to make a call, you've got to triage some emergency from the lobby, you need to subtract that out too, right? It's just what you actually attended. So we're going to look here at my screen where I'm going to show you how to enter a conference. Now, we have a drop-down menu. You can see the education type. You would select conference, and you're going to put the activity organizer, but this is really key. Instead of the name of each individual session you attended, you're only going to tell us the name of the conference. And the same thing for presenter. You're not going to tell us every individual presenter that you saw, right? Because especially if you went to a panel with 5 presenters, this would just be crazy. So where it says presenter, just type in various, and that will work. And then you can see down at the bottom here, your role as an attendee is what you would select when you go to a conference. This is actually what AFP Icon 2019 ended up being for total contact hours, 13.75. And that's pretty typical of what we would see of a 3-day conference. So just keep that in mind. If you send us something that says you went to a 3-day conference and you should have 24 contact hours, we will send your application back. So be sure you subtract everything out. Now, this is how you would enter a class. This is assuming that you're a presenter. But one thing that I want to bring up here is that if you are presenting on a webinar or attending a webinar, you're going to select class. We don't have webinar in the dropdown. So bunch your webinars under class, okay? And you will, again, tell us who the activity organizer is. You will tell us the name of the class. If you presented, then you're just going to type your own name in, right? And then you can see down here for a total number of contact hours, it says 2.5. Because you're selecting presenter for your role, our application is going to do the math for you. So when you submit this, those 2.5 hours are going to become 5 points, right? Because you're going to earn 2 points per hour of presenting. So there's that drop down right there. Now, another great way to earn your education points is through academic degrees. If you have an academic degree, that's great. If you don't have an academic degree, that's fine too. This is not a requirement. Academic degrees are the only thing that can exceed the 5-year time frame in this application. Okay. Now, all majors are accepted. If you have a bachelor's in Spanish from 1989, it's going to count. If you have a computer science master's from 2002, it's going to count, right? Any year, any major is going to qualify under this academic degrees section, okay? And you will earn 10 points per bachelor's, master's, JD, or PhD, and 5 points per associate's degree. We can only take up to 40 points from degrees. So if you have 6 master's degrees, it's going to top out at 40 points. Okay, so if you've got a ton of degrees, just make sure that you don't have to enter more than what's going to take you to that 40 points maximum. If you look at your screen now, this is an example of how you would enter in your academic degree. Very simple, right? You're just going to tell us what kind of degree, the university, the kind of degree, what the field of study was, and what your graduation date / date conferred is, right? That's all there is to it. Now, if you're going on an academic course that a university is offering, it's a little bit different. We do have academic course in the drop-down. And let's say it's non-fundraising related, because that's pretty common for an academic course. You're just going to select non-fundraising related there, and then you will select semester or quarter, and you will just put in the information. Okay? At this point, a lot of people wonder, does my education course qualify? I've been on a lot of things. Is it all going to count? And essentially, if it's fundraising related, it is more than likely that it's going to count. We're also able to count Raiser's Edge training. If you're really uncertain, one thing you can do is check our test content outline. It's on our website, and I will include a link to it in the follow-up email that I send you in the next 24 hours. So if it ladders up to something on there, you can rest assured that it's going to be fine. Now, if you present, the presentation cannot be related to your employment requirements. At your next board meeting, if you present for an hour to your board, that cannot count as presentation time, right? We're looking for presentations that you've done that are not part of your job. And then be sure, as I've said, you must document the exact amount of time that you were in that instruction, subtracting out all of the other pieces that were not contact hour time. We also allow you to earn points via service learning, which is our term for volunteering, and you can earn up to 10 points this way. You can earn 1 point per year per organization that you volunteer with. Now, there's not necessarily a minimum or maximum number of time that you need to volunteer, because a lot of volunteer opportunities don't run 12 months out of the year, right? Let's say that you volunteer for an AIDS walk and you're volunteering for 2 weeks surrounding that, right? That's going to count as 1 point per year per org, but it's not the kind of opportunity that would exist across 52 weeks of the year, and we understand that. If you're on a committee or board, you will earn 2 points per year per org that you're on that committee or board. And that would count, let's say, if you are on the board of your local AFP chapter, with your faith-based, if it's a church, a mosque, temple, whatever, that you're attending there. For schools, if your children's school has a committee or board and you serve on that, those are the kinds of things that will also count towards the service learning. Now, how do you enter that, right? If you look at your screen here, you'll see it's pretty simple. Under nature of service, you're going to tell us if you were a general volunteer or if you were in a leadership position. And you'll put your start date and your end date, and there's also a box to check if it is ongoing. All right. Now, if you look at your screen here, this is essentially what the dashboard looks like once you've entered in a bunch of your information. You can see at a glance everything that you've entered. And I'm just going to point out here that the total points, 53, is red. And it's red because it's shy of the 80-point requirement. Now, if it were 80 points or more, then those numbers would be green. I also want to point out here that this person has included something from 2013. So you saw that second circle go up, and it is coming up as 0 points. Our application will automatically zero out anything that is entered that is beyond that 5-year mark. So essentially, if you enter something today from 2016 and you don't submit your application until a year from now, those 2016 items will automatically zero out. All right, now we've got a couple tips. These are based on the biggest mistakes that we see when people submit their application. One is don't list non-fundraising education as fundraising, right? You can only list up to 10 points of non-fundraising education. If you've done more than 10 points, don't try to sneak them into fundraising education. Just know that we can only take 10 points. If you present at a conference, you're going to have that you also attend, you're going to have 2 entries for that conference, right? 1 entry for your time as a presenter and a 2nd entry for your time as an attendee. If you want to add a few extra hours to the education section, that's totally fine. We don't mind. You can go over those 80 points. It can be a great way to have some buffer points in there just on the off chance that something doesn't count, that we won't have to send the application back to you and request that you attend more education to make that points requirement. All right, so now we're going to jump on over to our next question break. And Paula, we had some questions come in.
Thanks, Ashley. We have a lot of great questions coming in. Just please bear with us as we respond, and I apologize if we can't get to them today. If we are unable to answer your questions, feel free to submit them to succeed@cfre.org, and we'll get to you as soon as possible. Can you count delivering new employee training presentations under education?
If it's part of your job, then it would not be able to qualify.
That's right. It would be considered professional performance, and any type of trainings that you deliver to your staff can be listed as a management project, as long as it's related to fundraising, of course. Great, here's another question. I've reached 80 points in the education section. Should I keep entering additional items?
You don't have to, no.
Correct. Once you hit 80, you're welcome to stop. But I do review applications, so I would recommend certainly adding. If you have them, feel free to continue to add additional items. In case something does get rejected, I can always look at other items to award those points. Here's another great question. If you presented at a conference that didn't qualify for CFRE credits, can you still get points for presenting on fundraising topics?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. So some conferences submit their schedules to us in advance so that they can get awarded CFRE points. And that will just tell you precisely how many points you'll earn by attending. Not all conferences do this, but if they're fundraising related, you'll still get points. So don't worry. If you attend something that's not got, the pre-approval from CFRE, that doesn't mean that it's not going to count necessarily.
Great. Here's a question related to volunteer service. Does volunteering need to be fundraising related?
No. Mm-mm.
Perfect. What if I am on a committee within my own workplace?
Oh, good question. Paul, how do you like to see that?
So we don't allow for compulsory volunteering. That's really considered part of your job duties. However, if you do volunteer or serve on a committee within your own organization and it's outside the scope of your job, you're welcome to list it. We may ask for clarification when we review the application, but it is eligible as long as it's not a part of your job responsibilities. And I have one more question. I participate in a mentoring program through AFP. Does mentoring qualify for points?
As a volunteer, if you're volunteering with AFP as a mentor, then that would qualify.
Yes, so if you're doing mentoring, it can be considered volunteer service, so that's eligible. However, training that you receive as part of your mentoring, unfortunately, is not eligible towards the education requirement. Okay, great. Thanks, Ashley.
All right, sure. Thanks. So now we're going to head over to the third key piece of the application, which is professional performance. This is you raising money, and there's a 55-point requirement. And again, we're looking at the last 5 years. We have a few ways that you can make this point requirement. There's communications projects, management projects, and actual funds raised. Most people get the bulk of their points through this actual funds raised. 1 point equals 25,000 US dollars. People always ask, why is it US dollars? And the reason is because we are accredited, and our accrediting body only allows us to have this requirement in one currency. So we're not allowed to have one requirement for Canadian dollars, one for Brazilian real, one for euro, one for Japanese yen. You get the picture, right? So we have a currency converter inside the application. So if you are fundraising in a currency that's not US dollars, it will help you calculate that. So you don't need to worry about that. If you decide to get all of your points through funds raised, it works out to be 1.375 million US dollars. I will talk a little bit later about management and communications projects, but if you, for some reason, can't make this points requirement off of funds raised, just know that that doesn't mean that you're shut out of this process by any stretch. You will be able to have the opportunity to earn points through management and communications projects. Now, fundraising, it's a team sport. You send out a DM piece and it brings in $300,000. It is impossible for your organization to say, okay, well, Rick brought in 20,000 of that, and Rakesh brought in 40,000 of that, and Shirley brought in 12,000 of that, right? We don't know. We can't necessarily parse that out. So if you are on the fundraising team that worked on that, then you are able to claim that total amount of funds towards your CFRE application. This applies to managers and directors as well. All right, so let's see what this looks like inside the application. Have a look here at your screen, and you're going to see that we have someone who's put their organization in, their fiscal year start, the funds that they raised, and then down here there is a box where they're going to select what kind of fundraising brought in those dollars, right? So the $623,000, if that was all brought in through special events, then you're going to click special events and it's going to move it over to the chosen box. I do need to give a word about bequests, planned gifts. They need to have either been received or be irrevocable pledges to count. So if Celine Dion calls you up in an hour and says, I want to leave your organization $2 million US, you might be going, oh, hot dog, I've just met my CFRE points requirement. But that is not going to be the case, right? That would have to be something that's already received or be in writing as an irrevocable pledge. Now, let's say you want to go to the avenue of doing a communications or a management project. The application has a space where you're going to fill out the information that you see on your screen here. We have examples of these on our website, and they're actual ones that we have accepted, and we've scrubbed the identifying information of the person who submitted it. So you can see some real world examples on our website. Now, you'll see up here in the drop down, this is where you are going to tell us that it was a communications project. Keep in mind that a project has a start and an end date. If I'm just sending my e-newsletter out every Tuesday, that's not a project. It's me doing my job. If we overhaul the e-newsletter, totally rethink it, jazz it up, we include, social media links, we've got mobile responsiveness, all these great things, and we find that it has lifted our donations by 17% over the previous year, that's a project, right? So if you have any questions about that, like I said, we do have a great wealth of information on our website about it. A project must have strategic intent, and it must have a start and an end date, and it must significantly impact fundraising outcomes. So hopefully that will help guide you on what you could use and that would be considered as a project. Once you enter all these great things in, again, there's a dashboard for this section that you can see here on your screen. And again, this person is just a few points shy, so the number is coming up in red, but once you hit 55 points, that number will be green. Now, we have a couple tips here about how to store your documentation for this. Now, when you submit your application, you don't have to send us your documentation. We do audit 10% of applications. It's entirely randomized, so it's just every 10th application that comes in. If that is you, then you will need to have this documentation to hand. And we recommend that in your personal email folder, or your personal email, you start a folder called CFRE Proof. And especially for education, that can be where you save copies of receipts, registration confirmation emails, all of that good stuff, so that if we need to have any evidence that you attended education, that will be there. Now let's talk about testing windows. We have 4 testing windows a year, and we offer the exam every month of the year except for December. If you want to sit for the exam, let's just say May 15th, You need to have your application submitted by the deadline at the front of that test window. So you can see here we have an April 15th to June 15th test window. So essentially you would need to have your application submitted no later than April 15th if you want to sit the exam in that test window. Don't submit your application on April 15th if you want to sit for the exam on April 16th, because it's going to take us a couple of business days to review your application. Then we need to send you the email with the information about scheduling your exam. So just be sure that you give yourself a bit of wiggle room there. From the date that your application is approved, you will have 1 year to sit for the exam. So if you feel nervous about having enough study time for the exam after you submit your application, just know that you have plenty of time. You have a year. And most people study 40 to 80 hours. So we're very, very generous and fair with that amount of time. Inside your application, if you look at your screen here, you'll see we have a drop down for selecting a test window. So you're just going to pick that there. And then we also have the ability if you need to request a special accommodation. So let's say during the exam, you need to be able to have a snack for medical reasons, or you need additional time to take the exam for a medical reason. This is where you're going to tell us about it. We do request that you notify us of any special accommodations 60 days before you plan to take the exam so that we can ensure that we have everything in place for you. All right, now we'll talk about our 2 exam options. If you look at your screen here, you will see that we have the option that you can take your exam from your home or office with a product called OnView, or you can take it at an in-person test center with Pearson VUE. And Pearson VUE actually runs OnView, so it's all one company. Our recommendation is heavily that if you can go to an in-person test center to do that. Obviously with COVID, if you feel more secure to take it from your home or office, we completely understand. If you have a mobility issue, absolutely. But we debuted the home or office option in January, and a lot of people are finding it to be a massive distraction. People thought, oh, I'll feel a lot more comfortable because I'll be in an environment that I'm used to. However, if people are noisy in another room, a delivery person knocks at your door, all of these things can really add up to a lot of distractions that can knock you off your game. So the in-person test center, they will supply earplugs. It is a very quiet, secure place to go. So people are actually finding that in-person is sometimes a better test taking experience. So keep that in mind. You can find your nearest test center by going to this URL on your screen, pearsonvue.com/CFRE. And once you're there, you can enter your postcode or zip code into the search bar. And please don't ask our staff today to look this up for you because it is self-serve. But once you enter that information in, it's going to populate the information that you see below here. So you'll get a map with all of the test centers in your area, as well as a list on the left of the exact addresses. And you'll notice, let's see, for the second one on here, for instance, it tells you that there's not an elevator. So you'll find all the information that you need to know about those test centers after you put in your postal code or zip code. All right, now the next piece of the application is the ethics section. And this is where you are going to agree to abide by the ethical principles. Very straightforward. You're going to check the I agree boxes and supply your initials. You're also going to agree to abide by the CFRE accountability standards. Now, once you've filled all this stuff out, you will have this page within the application that is a checklist. So there will be a green check mark next to everything that you have done correctly. And by correctly, I mean met the points requirements and agreed to abide by everything. Now, there could still be an error in there somewhere that we might find, that we will find. But just know that this application checklist is a great at a glance way to see if you have met the requirements in an area or if you still have work to do. Some general application advice. It's really daunting, and we hear this a lot from people who think, I'm not doing anything tonight. I'm going to fill out my CFRE application, and their intention is to fill it out end to end. It's very, very difficult, especially in the education section, to try to remember everything you attended in the last 5 years. If you can't remember what you attended in the last 5 years, have a look at your calendars. Sometimes your credit card receipts or credit card statements can jog your memory, expense reports, that kind of a thing. But our recommendation is that going forward, you just update it a little bit at a time. So every time you go to a lunch and learn, as soon as it ends, just jump into your CFRE application and log it, because we do not want you to miss out on any of the points that you've earned. Don't enter anything as TBD. We see this a lot, and I guess people think, I'll figure out what the name of the presenter was later. I can't remember right now. They enter TBD, and then they submit their application with the TBD, and then we have to send the application back. Also know that if we do need to send the application back to you, there's no charge for you to resubmit it. So just keep that in mind. I think sometimes people are really afraid to submit their applications because they think, oh, geez, if this gets sent back to me, then I'm going to be charged all over again. And trust me, you won't be. But we do recommend that you reach out to us with any questions that you have prior to submitting your application. And it's a lot easier for you, and it's a lot easier for us. When you go to submit your application, as I mentioned, that's when you're going to pay. And that is the only fee for initial certification. So either that $875 US or that $700 US. That includes everything for your testing center fees, for us to print and mail your certificate, for the digital badge that we're going to give you for your social media. That's all included in that one certification fee. If you decide to pay by check, there is a US $50 fee for that. And like I said, if there's missing or incorrect information, we will go ahead and reach out to you. Once your application is submitted, people think, okay, well, now what do I do? This is the time for you to start preparing for the CFRE exam. Obviously, if you want to start before you hit submit, that's fine. There's no wrong way or wrong timing for this, but you're going to want to get started on the studying. We have a robust number of materials and information for you in the study aid section of our website. Some of them are free. There are a couple that are paid. And just know that for the paid resources, they're completely up to you if you want to use them. There's no requirement at all. It's just whatever you feel like is going to best support you in your studying. And plan to study for at least 40 hours. We did a survey a few years ago, and we found that people who were successful on passing the CFRE exam studied at least 40 hours. If you have fewer than 5 years of paid professional fundraising experience, we recommend that you intend and plan to study for 80 hours. All right, and so now we have time for any remaining questions that have come in.
Great, thank you. Again, lots of great questions coming in. If we don't get to them today, please email us at succeed@cfre.org. So this one, I'm seeing quite a bit. How long does the exam take?
We give you 4 hours to take the exam, and the average length of time that it takes someone to complete it is 2 hours and 45 minutes. That was last year's information on that. So you are going to have plenty of time. You can move backwards and forwards inside the exam. So if you have time left over, you will be able to go back and check your work if you like.
Great. Are there annual membership fees for CFREs?
There is not an annual membership fee. There is a recertification fee. When you recertify every 3 years, you will pay either $510 US at the regular rate or $408 for the participating organization member rate. And a lot of people get this built into their work contract. Let's say you become a CFRE in 2021 and you move to another job in 2022, and you know that your recertification is coming up in 2024. When you are negotiating with your new employer, you can have that built into the contract, and we have a number of people that do that.
Perfect. What is the format of the exam?
It's multiple choice. There are 200 questions, and there are 4 options per question. There are no essay questions, no open-ended questions. It is all purely multiple choice.
Perfect. And how long does it take to get your results posted after taking the exam?
Immediately. As soon as you finish, your score will come up on the screen. 500 is a passing score, and the score range is 200 to 800. We do have more information on our website about how the scoring works, if that's of interest.
Yes, and sorry, just to clarify, we've actually had to change our process recently as we move towards an online delivery system. So scores, they will no longer appear on your screen immediately, but you'll be emailed a link within a couple hours after you sit for your exam, which you can then click on to view your score report. Sorry for the confusion.
And is that just for people who are taking it from their home or office?
It's actually for both if you're taking it remotely or if you're taking it at the in-person center.
Excellent.
Great. Do you have resources to support studying for the exam?
We do. If you go to the study aid section of our website, you'll find the test content outline. We have a resource reading list. It has 14 books on it, but you only need to read 1 to 3, just whatever addresses any gaps in fundraising knowledge that you have. And so essentially you won't have to wonder, okay, geez, what kind of books should I be purchasing for this? And we also have a glossary that's a PDF that I highly recommend that you look at because that is the language of the exam. So you'll know when we say stewardship, what do we mean? When we say donor, what do we mean? All of those good things.
Perfect. How many times can you retake the exam and what is the cost for the retake?
So there's a maximum of 3 attempts on one application. If you need to retake the exam, the retake fee is $375 US. And I remember giving this presentation in Austin and somebody said, oh my gosh, I have to pay over $1,000 for this. And, really, if you study properly and thoroughly the first time, you shouldn't have to worry at all about that retake fee. So don't get too hung up on that.
Great. Here's some questions related to performance. Is it okay if the entire professional performance requirement is raised through grants alone?
As long as you meet that requirement, it could be through one medium alone.
Yeah, that's correct. Just to add to that, it doesn't matter if you're raising it through one avenue alone, that's still eligible. Another question that keeps coming in is if I've raised funds through multiple avenues in a given fiscal year, do I have to list each avenue individually? And the answer is no. Any type of funds that you've raised within a given fiscal year can be consolidated into a single entry, and you're able to select all of those different avenues for that entry. Do funds raised count if you are in a supporting role, for example, a development associate rather than a development director?
So if you're on the fundraising team that has brought in the funds, then it's going to count. Paul, do you want to expound upon that?
Yeah, that's correct. So we do understand that fundraising is a team sport. So ultimately, if you were on the team that secured a specific number of dollars, all the team members are eligible to list that. However, if you were responsible for a very specific portion of that, then you would just list the amount that you were personally responsible for. Does the currency converter change over time? For example, when I enter in an amount, but at a later date it changes, would I lose points from my application?
Yeah, Paul, could you take that one?
Sure. So the currency converter website that we provide a link to actually allows you to enter in the dates, specific dates. So if you know that you raised money in, let's say, February of 2018, you can actually select the date range in the currency converter, and it will tell you what that amount was at that time, and that's what you would put into the application. So you won't ultimately lose points if things change currently, because you're documenting what was reflected at the time that you raised those funds. How is professional performance verified?
Paul, do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one again.
Since you review the application.
So with the audit, if you do get selected for audit and we do have to verify professional performance, there are a number of things that I will happily accept. 990s, annual reports. Really, for smaller organizations where maybe you're the sole fundraiser, those are certainly acceptable. If you're part of a larger organization and what you're listing in your application isn't the picture that's presented in a 990 or annual report, you can always provide snapshots from your donor database, board reports, audited financials, or even a verification from a supervisor via email would suffice. For fundraising events, should we count the gross proceeds or the net proceeds?
You can count the gross.
Great. Are there practice exams available to practice and find gaps to focus on?
Yes, absolutely. So we offer a practice exam through our website. It is subscription based, and there is a 30-day subscription option for $59.95 US dollars, or a 90-day subscription for $99.95 US dollars. And there is a bank of 100 questions. You will be able to answer those questions, and then it's going to show you exactly what you got right and what you got wrong, so that you will know from what you got wrong the areas that you need to focus on. I think the practice exam is a great tool, and a lot of people really like it, especially if they haven't taken an exam in a really long time and they feel like, okay, I need to just get into the groove of test taking, or maybe they've never taken an exam on a computer before. But it is by no means mandatory at all to use that practice exam. It's just up to your discretion if you'd like it.
Great. For documenting education, do you count the time that you're listening to the instruction only, or should you include time that you spend working on assignments for that training?
It'll just be the time that you were in the instruction itself. So if there's homework or something like that, that's not counted because we don't have a way to verify that time, but we can tell with an agenda from a conference or a course the hours that you were there.
Great. And if you do fail the exam, can you retake it, or do you need to do the application again?
You can retake it. There's a 30-day wait period before you can take it again.
Perfect. Let's see what else we have here. Here's a question related to recertification. Besides the fee, what else do you need to do for recertification?
Great question. You need to meet the professional practice, professional performance, and education requirements for recertification, and they're a bit different than initial certification. For your professional practice, so the time that you're working, you need to have worked 30 months out of a 36-month period. If you're out on maternity leave, medical leave, something like that, for longer than 6 months, contact us and we will be happy to work with you. Nobody is going to lose their CFRE because they're out on maternity leave. Then we have a 45 points requirement for education, and then there is a professional performance requirement as well to show that you have continued to raise funds.
Great. I'm a consultant. Can training individual boards who are clients count as CFRE education credit?
Paul, how would you like to see that, since it's related to that person's job, if that's what they're being hired to do?
Right. So unfortunately, if you deliver trainings to your clients, that's not eligible for the education piece. But the good news is it is eligible as professional performance, because that is a part of your job. You can list any trainings you do, whether you're a consultant or a nonprofit staff member. Any trainings that you provide to your clients or staff can be listed as a professional performance project. All right, what else we got here? So many good questions. Thanks again, everyone, for submitting these. Let's see here. If you have multiple roles within the same organization, but all within fundraising, do you enter them in each individually?
Oh, I'm not too sure about that, Paul. I haven't come across this question. What do you tend to find?
Yeah, so let's say you started off as an associate and then were promoted to director. List both of them as separate entries in your application, and of course you'll be indicating the time period that you held both of those roles, but we would want to see those separately, just in case you do get audited and we have to confirm your title for the specific time period, it wouldn't look like you were saying that you were a director for that entire period, and then that might cause issues with the verification from your employer. Great. Let's see what else we have here. Ashley, do you see any questions you want, or Sarah? Or Christine?
No, I think one of the questions that we do get often, though, is if I'm a member of multiple participating organizations, can I stack the discounts, right? So the participating organization rate is essentially 20% off the regular rate, and the answer to that is no. The most of a discount that we can give you is that $700 US fee for initial certification.
Great. Here's a really good one. Is it 10 points max for each continuing education item, or 10 points max for all non-fundraising continuing education?
10 points max for your non-fundraising education.
Right, so there's no cap on the number of fundraising related trainings that you attend for listing in the application. There's a cap on non-fundraising, as Ashley mentioned, which is 10 points, and a cap on volunteer service, which is also 10 points, and finally a cap on presenting, which is 36 points. How long does it take for an application to be approved after submitting?
It usually takes just a few business days. We turn these around pretty quickly.
Yep. Keeping in mind, I do try to review them as quickly as possible, usually within 2 to 3 business days. However, there are certain periods where there's a lot of applications coming in, especially around deadline time, so that period may take a little bit longer for you to hear back from us. Okay, great. I think that's really all the questions I have for now.
Okay, excellent. Well, if there's anything that you think of later or that we didn't get to today, please drop us a line at succeed@cfre.org, and we will be happy to get you the information that you need. So thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, and we look forward to reviewing your application. Take care.